Welcome to Straight Outta Health IT. Getting into health tech is rough, but here's an unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers covering a wide variety of issues affecting healthcare and the health tech industry. And now your host, Christopher Cunny.
Hello, everyone. This is Christopher Cunny, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT. I'm so excited today to have on our show one of the industry leading experts in telecommunications and technologies associated with virtual care. He's not only an expert and a leader in this space, but he's a former colleague of mine as well too, and a friend. So I'm happy to have him on the program for a number of different reasons. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Mr. Joe Drygas. Joe Drygas is Vice President of Industry Solutions and specifically healthcare for AT&T. And let me give you just a real brief rundown of this guy's amazing career. Joe leads the healthcare solutions team globally for AT&T Business. His business is comprised of highly experienced sales and technical professionals serving a multi-billion-dollar segment of AT&T's largest healthcare clients. A very charismatic visionary, and I can attest to that. Joe is a seasoned sales leader with a focus on customer experience, talent development, teamwork, and growth. Under Joe's leadership, AT&T Healthcare provides solutions customized for healthcare ecosystems, including the largest healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, payers, and life sciences companies worldwide. Joe has a passion for building relationships combined with his technical background are very evident in the progress that AT&T has made in evolving from a telecommunications provider to a healthcare strategic partner. And I've actually seen that process as well, so we'll be talking about that today. Prior to his role as vice president, Joe led sales teams responsible for the development and execution of mobility, IoT, and 5G strategies across AT&T's largest global and enterprise customer base. He's a veteran of the healthcare industry with more than a decade of experience. Joe grew both revenue, relationships, and consistently delivers customer satisfaction, employee engagements, and sales results. He joined AT&T in 2001 and worked in a wide variety of technical consulting and leadership roles worldwide. During his tenure, Joe has served clients across the business spectrum, from large to small, government, education, enterprise, and global. So he's done it all. He's a graduate of Wheaton College with a Bachelor's of Art in Business and Economics and a native Philadelphian, which I don't think I knew that at the time. But he spent 2 decades in Chicago. He's lived in my hometown, Atlanta, and he's now settled in Dallas, Texas, where he lives with his wife, Paige, and their 2 amazing sons. So without further ado, let me welcome to our this episode of Straight Outta Health IT, Mr. Joe Drygas. Joe.
Thank you, Chris. My friend, it's great to be here, joining you from downtown Dallas at AT&T headquarters. Really appreciate the time to connect with you.
No, I'm so excited again, Joe, to have you on the program. Thanks for taking time out. I'm sure a very, very busy schedule, having to manage healthcare practice worldwide for AT&T to have a little chat with me and the listeners of this program today. So let's jump right into it, because this 30 minutes will blow by before we know it, and I've already taken up 5 of them. So let's start, first of all, with your story. You know, a resume tells kind of the broad brush of a person's experience, but it doesn't really give you detail of their journey in life. So I want you to take 5 minutes of this time, or less, it's up to you, to really talk about your story, talk about your journey at AT&T, what drove you to want to focus on healthcare as a part of your passion for business, and just anything you think would be relevant to helping us fill in the blanks of that resume.
Happy to do it, Chris. First of all, it's hard to believe I've been at AT&T for 21 years. As you said, I started my time in Chicago. I spent some years in Atlanta. Now I'm at headquarters at AT&T. 21 years at AT&T.
Wow.
I've been in healthcare for like 15 of them. So
that's great. I didn't realize you were at AT&T that long. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's rare these days. People are always like, why'd you stay at AT&T so long? I say, well, I've always been challenged and the company's been good to me. and I've never gotten bored. And
Exactly.
if you've worked for a company for as long as I have at AT&T, it's like working for a lot of different companies. Companies change, leadership changes, your roles change. By no means have I done the same thing. I've done a lot of different things. The one constant, though, is I have been in healthcare for so many of those years. Like I said, I've spent about 15 years at AT&T in healthcare. I think, one of the things that I found, Chris, is just a passion for being able to work with healthcare providers and the
Sure.
ecosystem to transform the way healthcare is provided in the United States with technology. And
Absolutely.
it's kept me in the game. I mean, once you get into healthcare, you realize, first of all, the mission is you can't beat the mission of
Right.
healing people that are sick, treating people that have cancer, working with people that have chronic conditions, trying to keep people out of the hospital,
Exactly.
trying to help people with their wellness. It's been, a life passion and mission for me. And I feel like with AT&T and what we've been able to do with connectivity and technology, I think that we're really in a unique position to be able to come alongside with different parts of the ecosystem to make a difference. So it's a passion for me.
Right.
It definitely gets me up every day. I love going to, these annual conferences and being able to see people that have been in the industry a long time. A lot of them that have been to different places like yourself. And then for me, I go, I'm still at AT&T, but we're doing new and cool things. So
Absolutely.
that's most of my background. I did start with the company actually in an inside sales role. I know we're going to talk career a little bit later, but for me, I kind of stumbled into this huge company working in an inside sales role. And I just kind of learned and grew up through the company. I got into outside sales. I eventually got into management. I've done technical roles. In fact, I think when we first met, I was leading a technical organization.
You were.
And now I've got the pleasure of leading AT&T's healthcare vertical globally. As you said, it's providers, it's payers, it's pharma, it's life sciences, it's medical device companies. And it's really, really fun.
Well, congratulations, man. I've watched your journey. I've been a part of that journey for a short period of time as well, too. And it's amazing to see the evolution of Joe Drygas at AT&T. And kudos to AT&T for looking at someone like you, nurturing your background, your experience, and allowing you to continue to blossom into this amazing leader that you are now in this space. And the fact that you now have a passion for healthcare, that resonates with, any healthcare provider out there that's looking to leverage technology. So you get it, you understand the impact of it, and how what you do on a day-to-day basis can literally save people's lives. So let's jump right into that. You said some really important things about how AT&T has evolved. And I personally, again, have been a part of that journey for a period of time as well too. In another life, I served as a CIO who used AT&T services. I was an advisor on their advisory board, and I actually carried AT&T's card out of full disclosure as the director of emerging healthcare technology, working with Joe at that time too, when AT&T was actively just trying to penetrate the healthcare market. So that being said, let's talk about a little bit about today and what is AT&T doing today to really start to shift the paradigm around the healthcare delivery model. We know that AT&T is to some parts an infrastructure company, a software company, a technology company, an advisory company. So you cover so many different components of healthcare today. I'm just curious at a high level, we don't have time, I'm sure, to go to every particular product and service you have, but really at a high level, what is AT&T doing now to make a difference in healthcare?
Yeah, people ask me all the time, like, what is AT&T doing in healthcare? If I was to boil it down to just a couple of words, I would say we provide secure connectivity. And if you think about that, what that means, imagine now you're in a hospital and your patient records, your images, everything is coming across a network. In fact, more and more healthcare providers are moving that data into the cloud. And so if the patient's at the bedside, the clinician's at the bedside needs to pull up that chart, that record, that image, that's often coming over the AT&T network. I joke a lot of times and say if a doctor or clinician does not know what AT&T does, that's a good thing because it means we're working. When we work, we're in the background. The systems run, the electronic health records working. Clinicians can pull up radiology images. But if we ever break, unfortunately, we don't break often, and we usually build in resiliency. But if it does, it can cause catastrophic issues within the care delivery system. So as you said, Chris, we're the underlying infrastructure that connects hospitals, clinics, and ultimately can extend care outside of the home. We often think about that's our fiber footprint, that's the glass in the ground. It is mission critical. It's the lifeblood to a lot of these healthcare provider systems. By the way, same thing. We do that in pharmaceutical. We do that for payers. We do that for the whole ecosystem. That's sort of the critical nuts and bolts piece of the business. One of the things, though, that is just taking off tremendously is the innovation side of healthcare, and a lot of that's actually running off of our wireless and our Internet of Things business. And we've worked with a whole bunch of really neat companies over the last several years, especially during the pandemic, when all of a sudden so many people realized, I can't go into the clinic anymore. I need to go figure out how to interact with my clinician at home. Many people never had a virtual visit until COVID, and then it took on that experience. Absolutely. A lot of that interaction is happening over AT&T services as well. We've got a wireless network that oftentimes is the underlying connectivity to connect that clinician to the patient in his or her home.
Absolutely. So I do want to expound on that, and I did want to make a comment. It's amazing how now technology has really become what I call the next utility. When you think about, electricity in a hospital, it would be a challenge to run a hospital without electricity. It would be a challenge to run a hospital without water and plumbing. I would also argue now today it would be a challenge to run a hospital without IT, without technology, without connectivity. Every business and clinical decision today has an IT component built into it. And to your point, Joe, now that we're moving further and further outside the four walls of the hospital, we have this need to connect to this virtual environment into a wider ecosystem of players. And the only way we can do that is through telecommunications infrastructure. So that being said, I have a question for you. When you think about this whole concept of social determinants of health, you've heard that over and over. That's the kind of the story of the day. Technologies like, virtual care platforms, telemedicine, telebehavioral health, remote patient monitoring, collaboration between providers, chronic care management, et cetera. There's a plethora of technologies that can be put under the virtual care umbrella, which help members to access that care in a very timely, convenient manner. Also helps them adhere to treatment plans, allows better collaboration amongst providers and their patients, optimizes patient visits, creates whole new business models in some cases for some hospitals and healthcare systems. That's amazing. However, there's still a challenge that exists today when it comes to this concept of leveraging broadband technologies, 5G and higher, to do some of these things in a more efficient way. When you look at rural healthcare organizations, underserved communities where broadband may not exist today, that can still be a challenge. And so, technology brings the promise of improving their care, but we still have these inherent issues. So help our listeners understand, what is AT&T doing to help close that gap, to address some of these challenges around access to this infrastructure?
Yeah, I'll answer in a couple different ways. First off, you're right, Chris. I think we take for granted, I certainly do, that I have access to the internet. And there are so many Americans that don't have reliable access to the internet today. And we believe at AT&T, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to really close the digital divide. And part of that is getting internet access to every single American. So we're doing a couple different things. We have launched the Affordable Connectivity Program. Working with the government, we participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Sure.
We launched a low-cost broadband offer called Access by AT&T, which effectively gives qualified individuals the ability through the offsetting program from the government to effectively have free internet. In my career, I've never seen that before. So for certain qualified individuals now, you actually, maybe for those that could not afford internet before, we've partnered with the government, their program. We have an offer to try to get internet access to more and more Americans, and it's super important. The other thing we've started to do is we're working with more and more municipalities who have been taking advantage of government funding as well to go and bring fiber into neighborhoods that never had it before. And just this notion of bringing fiber in a neighborhood, I mean, it really is game changing. I can speak from experience now because having, moved from a neighborhood where we had legacy infrastructure, and I moved to Frisco, Texas, and, it was all farms just a few years ago. AT&T came in, my neighborhood has fiber to the home, and what I can do into my home it's unbelievable. I mean, my connectivity at the home, we could all come into my house. We could all be on video.
Exactly.
It'd be no problem. I can run a business out of my home. The connectivity is so good because I have fiber running in the home. The reason I say that, though, isn't because I'm trying to give a commercial to AT&T, but more to say, this is what really gets me excited when you think about the future, because a lot of things that happen in a hospital today happen in the hospital today because they don't have the infrastructure to do it elsewhere. But imagine if you could take that same concept, in a hospital today, you have telemonitoring services. Maybe it's a clinician that's sitting, on another wing, who's, effectively with technology and cameras, keeping an eye over the patient.
Exactly. Connected to the local network, not
to the home, right? Mm-hmm. So with connectivity, that becomes possible. The last thing we're doing, Chris, though, is we think about connectivity as it's wired and mobile. It's glass and it's spectrum. It's really both. And I think when you do that, you have the ability to connect more and more Americans than ever before. As an example, AT&T was awarded by the government to be the contractor for the FirstNet network, which is the government's network for first responders and also for eligible healthcare institutions. We've been able to partner with the FirstNet Authority to get certain virtual health use cases approved to use the same network. What that's doing is we're reaching further and further into rural areas. We're getting our coverage better and better into places we didn't have coverage before. And that's also now another platform where providers can use that platform in order to get connectivity to, their patients and members in their home.
So then how does the delivery of care change? I mean, knowing that now they have access to this amount of connectivity, how does the model of healthcare then change for those providers and then for those patients?
Well, I think one of the things that we really love about cellular is it just works. So if you think about, a lot of cellular connected devices, you power them on and they just connect, they work. You don't have to go and pair them and it's not complicated. So what we believe is already starting to happen, Chris, is that more and more providers are going to leverage the power of cellular, leverage the FirstNet network to be able to potentially send a, patient home that maybe has COPD and give that patient an easy way to, connect certain vitals, maybe get on a wireless weight scale, maybe put on a blood pressure cuff and be able to take those readings, securely transmit them back to the clinician, and be more engaged in healthcare and wellness from the time of discharge, and hopefully avoiding any kind of readmittance because we lost, track of that, critical vital information. So I think we're really, we've been talking about these concepts. I mean, look, you and I've been talking about this for 10 years.
For 10 years,
but things are evolving, and a couple different things are evolving. And one of the biggest things is access is really getting, better, faster, cheaper, secure. And so as that evolves, coupled with reimbursement that continues to evolve, I think we're really getting to a place where, patients will be more engaged than ever before on their wellness, on their care plans. And truly, I think it's going to move the needle for healthcare in the United States.
No, that's exciting, and it's exciting to see the investment that, companies like AT&T are making in the core infrastructure that will then allow these applications and systems to be leveraged, at the lowest common denominators as well. Because as you know, there's only a small percentage of the overall population that contributes to the major cost in healthcare, and it's primarily due to chronic diseases. And if we can somehow connect with those people early on and through that cycle, and allow the technology and the providers to be able to interact in a more efficient way with those patients, hopefully we can start to close the gap there and reduce the mortality rate, but more and the costs associated with the delivery of care across the board. You did say something that I wanted to drill down a little bit further on. You talked about some of the federal mandates and legislation that's now driving the adoption of the adoption of the technologies and the access to these technologies. I'm just curious, we talk about this term, social determinants of health, but there's another term, political determinants of health, and that's how policies and legislation also has an impact, good, bad, or ugly, on the delivery of care. I'm just curious from your perspective, you mentioned a couple already, were there anything, and if this is one of those landmines, you can shake your head and say, this is a landmine. I don't want to touch that one today, and I'm okay with that. But I'm just wondering, what's restricting AT&T and companies like you from being able to realize that true dream and vision? Are there policies, legislation, just social issues that might be slowing down the progress or impeding your ability to get to these lowest common denominators and provide affordable telecommunications infrastructure for providers?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Chris, that we did just over the past year is we gave guidance to the street that we would continue to significantly invest in our networks, and AT&T's invested more in the network infrastructure than any company for many years running.
Right.
And we've made a commitment again that we would invest $24 billion into the network, which is both the glass in the ground as well as, towers and spectrum. The thing about our business is it's really expensive. It's very capital extensive. And so if you don't continue to invest in the network, then capacity, just disappears. And, we're forecasting significant growth. And so we have to continue to make those investments. So it's really, it's capital intensive, it's time. But like I said, we've had really good success partnering with the government and some of these programs to go into areas we've never gone before. And FirstNet's been huge for us because commitment to the government, the FirstNet Authority was, we're going to get more rural than ever. And we're already starting to see that. In fact, I was talking to a client a couple of weeks ago who told me that he traveled 48 states, I think he said, across the United States in an RV.
Oh, wow.
And was testing his FirstNet coverage. And he said, you wouldn't believe there were very few places in the United States where I didn't have FirstNet coverage. And then compared to commercial coverage, it was significantly better. Exactly. And so that's where we're excited about, when we look at the world, from a connectivity lens, we're excited about, getting more and more Americans access than ever so that ultimately they can use that for health use cases.
That's great. That's exciting. And kudos to AT&T again for making that commitment regardless and buying into the vision of healthcare because healthcare in and of itself is a mission. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's really about improving the well-being of your fellow man. So congratulations on that. I did want to touch a little bit about, and you talked about it earlier, and I wanted to drill down into it just a little bit more. Obviously with us adopting digital technologies as a part of the healthcare model, we also have these bad actors that are out there today, right? Who are taking advantage of healthcare systems who have not put in place robust privacy and security infrastructures to support this growing demand for digital data. I'm just curious, what is your company doing to one, help mitigate some of those risks, and how are you potentially helping customers to address any of those gaps that they may not foresee as a challenge for them today?
If I was sitting down with a healthcare provider, anybody in the C-suite, and said, what's one of your biggest concerns? What's one of the things keeping you up at night? This one almost hits the list every single time.
Sure.
And it's the ugly reality of the business. We're in the business of providing healthcare because during the pandemic, there were more malicious attacks, cybersecurity attacks on healthcare than they've ever seen before.
Wow.
So you got these healthcare organizations that are trying to keep this pandemic from killing people, and yet you've got bad actors coming in. And again, it's an ugly part of our business. So what are we doing about it? Well, one of the biggest ways that bad actors come in is through internet. A lot of times we've got various offers where we basically take the intelligence that we have on our network, we build it into products and services like our internet connectivity, and we help reroute, scrub, and divert bad traffic coming in.
Sure.
These attacks that come in, I mean, what happens is you might have the best network, the most robust network, but you can get flooded with an attack and it can literally lock up everything. So what that looks like for a clinician is, I could be at the bedside in a patient record, or maybe even getting coaching on how to provide treatment, and suddenly things could lock up. So, I mean, definitely can have patient impact. So, we work to secure internet access. We also work with a lot of healthcare organizations that have implemented a lot of different systems. We bring in our experts who are actually like, nice hackers,
right.
if you will. But they
white hats, right?
Yeah, they try to break in. They try to see if they can get access to things they shouldn't get access to. Because as we know, being in this industry, you also have to keep patient information secure as well. You have obligations to do that. So we do that. And then the third thing is we just continue to look for innovative ways to build in secure connectivity to everything we do. So a good example is with FirstNet. We actually offer tower to core encryption within the service, which means that now that wireless transmission that you have using FirstNet is more secure than anything we've ever had on the commercial network before. So it's those types of things that we say, and that's why I always say secure connectivity, because fast connectivity, reliable connectivity is really important. But if it's not secure, then ultimately you could still have impact to healthcare. So it's got to be secure.
No, that's great. That's again exciting to hear. Those types of investments are being made, because the reality of it is, especially as you move into the rural health environments, those organizations just don't have the resources and the expertise to adequately protect that data from these bad actors. So they have to rely on partners like AT&T to help mitigate that risk, along with the things that they can invest in as well. Really, final two questions for you. First one is really on how does AT&T, what is AT&T doing to position itself to be really an advisor or partner to healthcare organizations? CIOs, and I'm a recovering CIO, have a myriad of challenges, in front of them. They're constantly putting out fires. They're trying to figure out how to meet the demands of the organization with, minimum amounts of resources available to them. They've got regulatory issues, bad actors, difficulty hiring staff, you name it. There's tons of issues that, along with all the other regulatory demands that exist. How is AT&T positioning itself as not just a vendor to healthcare systems, but really acting more as a partner and an advisor? Because the next generation CIO is not the guy that's just managing the data center and the infrastructure. They're having to be business leaders that are trying to leverage technology, one, to transform the delivery care model, to drive efficiencies in that model, to create new business channels for healthcare organizations, and to innovate, and help us stay competitive in a very highly competitive marketplace. I'm just curious, what are some of the things you guys are doing to help them be better at their jobs?
Well, two things, Chris. First is, we realize that in order to really achieve the mission that we're on to transform healthcare, we've got to be the best connectivity provider for the healthcare industry.
Sure.
And that's our mission. I mean,
right.
We want a healthcare CIO to look at AT&T and say, you're the partner we want to take our connectivity strategy in the hospital, to the clinic, to the home, to the next level. And in order to do that, we've got to deliver an unmatched customer experience. Now, we did get recognized by J.D. Power as providing the best wireline services to large enterprises, which we think is a good step forward. But we also know there's still work to be done. We need to move faster. We need to provide, a better quality experience. We need to provide a better digital experience. So these are things we're absolutely working on. But, I'll give you an example, Chris. During the beginning of COVID,
right.
February, March of 2020 in the US, all of a sudden we had all these healthcare systems and CIOs running around trying to figure out how are we going to handle this. And one of the ways was, well, we're going to amp up bandwidth, especially the internet, because all of a sudden you had all these employees that used to come into the office. Now they're coming home, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing we had is stand up COVID testing clinics and putting capabilities in a parking lot that never existed before. What we learned through that experience was our traditional processes and the ways of supporting these customers would not work. So we broke our protocols, processes just to move faster. And actually what we learned through that is we can actually move a whole lot faster. So, one way is by providing exceptional experience. At the end of the day, it's really about the experience that our customers have doing business with us.
Sure.
And we're not perfect, but we're on a mission to make it better. I think the other way, Chris, is that's why we have the healthcare vertical, because we realize that if you really want to be serious about this space, you have to understand the challenges. You have to understand the dynamics. You have to have the passion for care. It's not just another industry. In a lot of cases, it's not even for profit.
Right.
It's for mission.
That's right.
And so I'm proud to say, and this is my leadership team. This is my organization. I work with people that every day they get up and they look at this as, I want to provide, a better experience for my customers because I care about the people in their hospitals. And so that's why we have the vertical, for that very reason.
Yeah, that sounds great. Final question, final official interview question. I may have one on the side if we have enough time. We've got about 4 minutes here. What's on the horizon for AT&T? Obviously AT&T is a 100-plus-year-old company. You guys have led the way in innovation in all sorts of verticals, and now you're, invested in healthcare as well. What are some of the things AT&T has, got in the lab that you can share? Some of the cool stuff that we could expect to see AT&T start to lead the pack on.
Well, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to start happening inside of the hospitals. Mm-hmm. I say that depending on your last hospital experience, you probably weren't blown away by technology. Probably been to other places where it's been more of a consumer-centric technology experience. I think the technology we provide is going to really transform what happens within the hospital.
Sure.
Everything from the way you walk in the door, the way you check in, the way you navigate the hospital, the entertainment that you have, but even how you interact with the clinicians in the hospital. We believe that, technologies like virtual reality and AI have a lot of promise for what goes on within that place. I mean, it's not unheard of, and it's already starting to happen where you'll bring in virtual and remote expertise into that operating room or into that surgical procedure. So I think that's on the horizon. Now flip it though to your home. And can you imagine, Chris, being in your house and potentially getting some sort of operation or procedure that traditionally you would have had to go in the hospital for? Exactly. So I think that's where, again, we look at technology and get excited about, with AI, with robotics, paired with really reliable, secure connectivity, the possibilities are really limitless in terms of where you get your care in the future.
No, that's great. That's exciting. I can imagine, the realization of hospital at home, right? And actually being able to have some of these treatments done in the privacy and comfort of your home, and how AT&T's infrastructure and technology will be a key component of that. Well, I can't believe the time has gone by so quickly as I knew it would. And I've got to have you back on in the future to continue to drill down in some of these areas as well, too. Just any final thoughts, 30 seconds, any comments you'd want to share with our audience about your journey or just AT&T in general?
Well, I mean, again, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I really always enjoy being able to tell my story. I'm proud of not only the work that AT&T's doing, but I will say I'm really excited to see the future ahead with what the providers are doing, what pharma's doing. I believe that a lot of people are working on innovative ways to really change the landscape of healthcare in the United States. And it's a partnership. And one of the things we talk about at AT&T is we have our role. We're the connector. You got the cloud players. You've got the software players. You've got these people that are creating really neat technologies that are finding ways to pull vital information off of patients without even having to attach anything on their bodies. All of this stuff together, I think, is going to make a real impact. So thanks again for having me, Chris. I really enjoyed the dialogue, and it's always great to see you're changing healthcare one day at a time.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thank you again, man. I really appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule to provide this insight on what AT&T is doing in the space. We're excited to see the journey continue. We appreciate your leadership in this space as well. And I want to thank all of my listeners again for joining us on this episode of Straight Outta Health IT. Continue to support us, provide feedback, and we'll see you next week on the next episode. Take care. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to Straight Outta Health IT. We hope you enjoyed today's guest. For more unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers, be sure to tune in next week. For the show notes, transcripts, and resources, please visit Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. We invite you to give us feedback by reaching out to Christopher Cunny on LinkedIn, just searching for Straight Outta Health IT, and you'll find us. We are constantly having live discussions about diverse topics in the industry.